Booker T. Washington almost lost all respect from the black community because of this one incident. And this incident involves my very own cousin, Thomas Arthur Harris, who Booker T. Washington referred to as a worthless and foolish man. And the local white newspapers had this to say about Thomas. The Tuskegee newspaper described him as, and I quote, a notorious mulatto man, Negro lawyer, rather seditious character. Tom Harris is a very ambitious and rather idle Negro man, extremely unpopular in his own race on the account of his airs of superiority and having little influence with them. But what did Mr. Harris do to anger the community of Tuskegee, Alabama in 1895? He had a dream. He simply had a dream to become a lawyer. Yes. You heard that correctly. The white people in Tuskegee did not want a black lawyer in their white town. They tolerated black farmers, teachers, and businessmen, but could not accept black lawyers or editors. Imagine hating someone because they're trying to better their life. Well, that's what happened to Mr. Harris. Thomas was born enslaved and was made to be a Confederate officer's body servant. After emancipation, Mr. Harris wanted to make the best of his life. He got married and moved from South Carolina to Alabama. Mr. Harris was admitted to the bar in 1890 and practiced in Birmingham before he returned to Tuskegee. While practicing in Tuskegee, he reached out to white preachers from up north, some who he invited down to stay in his home. A white mob heard of Mr. Harris's accommodations and forced the white minister to leave and sent a note to Mr. Harris giving him a deadline for leaving town. Yes, they wanted him out of Tuskegee for pursuing his dreams. By the time Mr. Harris received the note, the deadline had already passed. As Mr. Harris crossed the street to ask his white neighbor's advice, the lynch mob came down the road with blazing torches. "There they are now, coming to kill me," Mr. Harris shouted, entering John H. Alexander's front yard, whom was his white neighbor and friend. In an attempt to escape by running through the house and out the back door, fearful for his daughters seated at the porch, Alexander wrestled with Mr. Harris. As Mr. Harris burst into the yard, the mob rushed behind him in the light of the moon, put his pistol within a foot of Mr. Harris, and fired with the intent to kill. Mr. Harris squatted in time to dodge the bullet, which struck Alexander in the throat and lodged in his spinal column. Other shots rang out, one wounding Mr. Harris in the leg as he ran down the road towards his house. With his leg bone shattered, Mr. Harris lay in the dirt road, screaming for help. Several white physicians in the crowd rushed past him to aid the white man, Alexander. Tom Harris's son, Wiley, brought him in the dead of night to Booker T. Washington's home, where he was not well received. The white newspaper reported that Booker T. Washington has ever conducted himself and his school in the most prudent manner. And learning that a mob was in pursuit of Harris, he told him that he could not be admitted there. The report that Washington had turned away Harris pleased local whites, but brought anger to Negro press all over the country. In a debate on the Atlanta Compromise at the Bethel Literary and Historical Society in Washington, and an important forum of black expression, the Harris affair was characterized as a hypocritical and showing natural bent of the man. The House roared in its approval when a speaker said, "Mr. Washington, the Negro head of a Negro Institute, refused a fellow Negro admittance to his Negro college, thereby denying the right of medical assistance." The Reverend Francis Grimke left the Bethel Literary meeting very disturbed, as Booker T. Washington was one of his dearest friends. He wrote to Booker T. Washington in an attempt for clarity. Washington wrote back, and I quote, "After the man was shot, his son brought him to my house for help and advice. And you can easily understand that people in and about Tuskegee come to me for help and advice in all their troubles. I got out of bed and went out and explained to the man and his son that I could not take the wounded man into the school and endanger the lives of students entrusted by their parents to my care to the fury of some drunken white men. Neither did I, for the same reason, feel that it was the right thing to take him into my own house. For as much as I love the colored people in that section, I cannot feel that I am in duty bound to shelter them in all their personal troubles and any more than you would feel called on to do the same thing in Washington." Washington also told Grimke something he had told no one else. "I helped them to a place of safety and paid the money out of my own pocket for the comfort and treatment of the man while he was sick. Today I have no warmer friends than that man and his son. They have nothing but the warmest feelings of gratitude for me and are continually, in one way or another, expressing this feeling. I do not care to publish to the world what I do and should not mention this except for the false representation. I simply choose to help and relieve this man in my own way rather than in the way some man 1,000 miles away would have had me do it. And it is true. Booker T. Washington did help my cousin recover as he wrote him shortly after the incident from Selma. Mr. Harris said, "Dear friend, I remember all your kindnesses to me. I will not take time to mention them, as you know them all. I think I will be able one day to walk on my leg as well as ever, and it will be a little shorter than the other." Once Mr. Harris recovered, because he couldn't return to Tuskegee, he went to Mexico. But he did not know Spanish, so he eventually returned to the United States, settling in Houston, Texas, before coming back to Alabama. To this day, you still have people trying to put black people in their place. They're shocked by our intellectual abilities, and they constantly comment on those of us who they believe to stand out. "Oh, you're so articulate. Oh, I'm surprised you know that." When is it going to end? We are not these stereotypes that you created.